My name is Troy Love. I am LCSW. I have a private practice in Arizona. I'm also an Amazon best-selling author of the workbook Finding Peace. And today we're going to be talking about an, a component of that work, which is about core beliefs. So if you were able to watch or be with us last time, we talked about attachment wounds, and I identified that there were 6 attachment wounds. The first is loss, rejection, abandonment, neglect, betrayal, and abuse. And I use the analogy that these wounds are like sunburns. And so if you get a sunburn, you can still function. You can still go to work. You can do whatever you need to do. But if somebody bumps up against those wounds, then it causes pain. And there's usually a reaction about that. And one of the things that gets activated when the wounds are stirred is what we end up believing about ourselves. So let me see if I can show this screen. I've got to remember how to do that.
It's share at the bottom of your screen. You click on share, and then you can share screen.
Oh, I don't see that.
Move your cursor around, your mouse around.
Oh, maybe. There isn't. Let's see. I don't see it. It's okay. I can do it without. So, I.
Can you multitask? If you email it to me, I will share my screen.
Sure. Yeah. Oh,
These
there it is.
are
It's right
real.
there. It's right in front of my face. It was green, a green button. Can you see that?
Yes, Finding
Okay.
Peace. Yes.
There you go. Okay. There. So I love J.K. Rowling's work. I love Harry Potter. I kind of a fantasy geek, but in one of her books, she tells there's a new professor in town. Her name is Professor Umbridge, and she's a particularly nasty character. And if you're not familiar with Harry Potter, that's okay. If you are familiar, you'll know what I'm talking about. But Harry is the main character of this series, and he has been trying to tell his fellow students that the evil wizard who could like destroy the world has come back to life. And Professor Umbridge won't have anything to do with that. She is in denial about that, and she thinks that Harry is telling lies. And so he continues to try and tell the students in class that he's back, that Voldemort is back. And it makes the professor so angry that she sends Harry to detention. And he has to write sentences for detention. But because they live in a magical world, the pen that Harry is using to write the sentences, he has to write, "I will not tell lies" on a piece of paper. But every time he writes it, it's written in blood, and then it scratches the words, "I will not tell lies" on his hand. So it keeps scratching, and then the scratches will go away. I mean, it's really painful. And Harry asks how many times does he have to write these sentences, and his teacher says he has to write them until it sticks. In other words, until the words don't fade away. And I use that analogy because I think it's a really powerful. When these wounds are created for us in our lives, when we feel abandoned or betrayed or rejected or abused, we try to figure out, like, why is this happening to me? And a lot of times these happen to us when we're children, although many of the wounds can also happen when we're adults. But we immediately, I think we're an inquisitive species. We really want to understand why things are happening to us. And when a child is asking, well, why is my dad yelling at me? Why is my mom beating me? Why did my best friend stop talking to me? Children don't really have the ability to, they don't have the cognitive ability to be able to understand, well, that's their stuff. That's my mom and dad's stuff. They need to work on some stuff. My dad's an alcoholic. He probably should go to AA or something. He needs to work on his stuff. A child doesn't have the ability to figure that out. And so because they are living kind of in an egocentric world, the only explanation that seems to make sense to a child is, well, it must be me. It must be something wrong with me. And that is the first, um, and and so as he begins or she begins to think, well, that must be me. There must be something wrong with me. I must be bad or whatever. That message, just like in Harry Potter, begins to get tattooed on our heart. Those negative core messages begin to be written on our heart. And I use the analogy, or I say that it's been tattooed in like fluorescent ink, so it doesn't light up all the time. Like when you're having a great day and things are going really well, it's almost like you can't see it. But once the wound gets stirred up, that loss wound or that rejection wound gets bumped, it's like somebody turns on a black light and all of a sudden there you can see it, and it's bright, and it it's almost like the lens in which we begin to see the world. I'm putting on these glasses now that I believe that there's something wrong with me, and that changes the way that I see the world. So for when we get there's three genres of core beliefs, and the first one is what I was talking about right now, which is the I am genre. It's a genre that says, well, there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. And we if when we write it out, if I were going to write it out, it's not just that I'm bad or I'm unworthy or I'm not good enough, but it's also almost this explanation of, and that is why my dad beats me, or I'm ugly, and that's why my husband looks at porn, or I'm not good enough of a friend, and that's why everybody abandons me. And it's this explanation that we're coming up with, this negative tattoo that's written on our heart that explains why things are going on. And with this particular genre of it's I am, it's all about me. Like here's some examples. I'm too fat and that's why nobody likes me. I'm dumb and that's why I fail in school. I'm rich and that's why I have a lot of friends. These can be positive core beliefs too, but usually when our wounds get stirred up, they're negative. They're not positive. So the second genre is trust or safety. And this genre is all about, I can't trust other people. My world isn't safe. My world doesn't feel comfortable. And so there's nobody really that I can lean on for support. There's nobody that I can ask for support from. I'm going to have to do this all by myself. I can't trust other people. Along with this, if you're an addict, then the core belief could be, I can't live without my drug of choice. I can't live without sexually acting out. Life without sex seems impossible. That's where this negative core belief shows up, is that I don't think I can do it without my drug of choice, or I can't do this by myself. So it's the sense of, oh, that's actually the next one. I'm I'm combining the two, but it's the sense of, I have to do this alone. I can't lean on other people. I can't trust other people. So here's some examples of that. They can be generalized, like all people are mean, or men are scum, or women are manipulative, or children are ungrateful, or the world is unsafe. It can be generalized to like the whole world is like that, or it can also be specific. So specific, like my husband or my wife can't be trusted. I can't trust them. I can't count on my boss. My mother is a martyr. My children are ungrateful. My home is unsafe. So it can be specific or it can be general. But again, it's that prism, or those glasses from which I see the world. It's the paradigm of which I'm seeing the world, that because I've been wounded, my world isn't safe. And we do the same thing. Blank, my mom, my dad, my boss is, and then I put in an adjective, and therefore what? And it's the same pattern as what we did before. Well, I'm bad and unworthy, and that's why people treat me badly or whatever. So my father's a drunk, and therefore I don't trust him. My boss steals from the company, and therefore all bosses are bad. People are cruel, and therefore I can't leave my house. So that becomes that genre of it's really about safety and trust. And usually when we're wounded, it doesn't feel, our worlds don't feel safe, and we don't feel like we can trust anybody. And then the last one, that's where that belief of I can't live without my drug of choice comes in, and that's powerlessness. And it's a sense of I can't do it. Um, I can't live without sex. I can't live without alcohol. I can't live without sugar. There's nothing I can do about this situation. I can't let out my emotions. I can't share what's really going on. I can't reach out to other people. I can't trust my judgment. I can't succeed. So it's this very this message of powerlessness. And so it becomes this almost like this trifecta. If I believe that there's something wrong with me, I'm bad and I'm unworthy, and I believe that I can't trust other people, that the world is unsafe, and I also believe that I'm powerless, there's nothing I can do. Well, now I'm really, really stuck because I'm bad. So what can I do about that? I can't change that. I'm powerless, so I can't seem to change that. And the world is unsafe, so I'm going to have to figure out how to do this all by myself, and it's going to be really, really bad. And I think that's part of what makes people struggle to go to 12-step groups, because they already are carrying this sense of there's something wrong with me. I can't trust anybody else. I can't walk into a room and share other stuff with other people. What are they going to think? They're going to hurt me. They're going to judge me. And so I'm just going to have to figure out how to do this all by myself. I'm going to do it all by myself. So like I said, we can have positive core beliefs, but those usually don't light up when our wounds have been stirred up. So I'm awesome. And then the negative core belief that I'm powerless. So if you were going to identify what your core beliefs were, it's helpful if you identify what wound I have. So let's say I have an abandonment wound. What's the core beliefs that get activated when my abandonment wound shows up? If I have a rejection wound, is it a different core belief that gets activated when that wound stirs up? Is it different? Is it the same core belief? It could be different. And then I start to walk the clients through, well, let's figure out, is it actually true? Is this core belief actually true? Is there any validity to it? What is the evidence? And I put that in quotation marks. What's the evidence that you're using to confirm that this is true or not true? And so here's some examples. I'm not good enough because I failed the test. Well, okay, so you've now failed the test. So is that evident? That's the evidence you're using to say, well, I'm not good enough. I'm a bad student. I'm horrible. I'm not good enough because I relapsed for the millionth time. I can't seem to overcome this addiction. Here's proof that I am not good enough. And so we want to take a look at, well, what is the evidence that you're using to to support this core belief? And is it actual, once we are able to write that down, we can then start to take a look at it and start to evaluate whether the evidence is sound. Would it hold up in court if we were going to put it on trial? Does this evidence actually mean anything whatsoever? But a lot of times we don't even recognize what's the evidence that we're using to support the core belief. We've just accepted it. It's been written on our heart so many times that we just think, well, it must be true. I'm a horrible person. It must be true. So then, if we start to ask that question, well, is it really true? What is really true? Let's tell the truth. So using the example of I failed the test, so I must be a horrible student. Well, have you failed every test that you've ever taken in your life? Well, no. Actually, the last 3 tests I took, I did a really good job. I got A's on those. Okay, so you have 3 examples of tests that show that you are a good student and 1 test that you failed. So it seems a little lopsided, but you automatically have started to go to the negative core belief that I must be a really bad student. what does the evidence show? What does the evidence show? The other one, I've relapsed for the millionth time. Well, how many days of sobriety did you have this year? And if I start to count, I'm like, wow, I've had more days of sobriety this year than I've had relapse. Okay, so does that mean that you're a failure then? You've actually had more successes this year than relapses. So what does the evidence show? And as we start to ask that question, well, tell me more about that evidence. Tell me more about what does the evidence actually show. It helps us separate a little bit from us wanting to hold on to that core belief and say, yes, it's absolutely true. And it makes us start to challenge it a little bit and say, well, maybe it's not so bad. I remember when I was getting my bachelor's degree, and one of my final classes, we had to do a presentation for the class, and we had to be evaluated by the class at the end. And I don't even remember exactly what the presentation was about, but I remember sitting in my professor's office, and she has this really, really small office, and she had a million books all over the shelves, and they were kind of bowing a little bit because they were so heavy. And I'm sitting there almost knee to knee with her, and she hands me over the evaluations, and she asks me to read them. And I'm reading through, and there's probably about 25 evaluations in there. And one evaluation, the person said, hey, I think you probably could have handled this a little better. Maybe you could have tried to do this. Just one comment. The rest were amazing. The rest were great. And the teacher said to me, so what do you think? And I'm guessing you can figure out which evaluation I focused on. I focused on the one negative comment, and it wasn't even that negative, but I focused on that. And I'm like, well, yeah, I probably could have done that better. And I really thought about it, and I should have done this. And oh, I must be really a horrible presenter. I totally bombed that. And what's going on right there? That was my rejection wound getting stirred up, and the negative core belief that I already was carrying around with myself that I'm horrible. And so I'm using this one piece of evidence to support that I must be horrible. And my teacher leans over to me and she says, how many positive evaluations were there in there? And I said, like maybe 24. And she says, isn't it interesting that we will like focus on that one negative comment, and that's what we focus on, even though you have 23 positive comments to say you did a really good job, and we focus on that one negative. And I've thought about that and how many times I do that. Like people are giving me compliments or whatever, and I will focus on the one mean thing or the one negative thing that people say. And I've realized that that's because what's written on my heart is that I'm bad or I'm unworthy or there's something wrong with me. That's what's been tattooed. And so it almost is foreign when somebody says that they appreciate me or they think that I'm valuable. That doesn't register with what's tattooed on my heart, and so it's easy for me to just reject that. I'm not going to pay attention to that, but that one negative comment, that matches what's on my heart. And so I use that and say, see, here's the evidence. I'm a horrible person. Here's the evidence. And it's just to me how amazingly powerful these negative core beliefs can be in impacting the way that I experience the world. So then once I start to take a look at that, I can start to look at the negative beliefs, and I'm going to ask a question that I think is really powerful, which is, why am I choosing to accept this negative core belief as true? Why am I? What is the benefit that I'm getting out of this core belief? And usually when I ask this question to clients, the answer is like, I'm not getting anything good out of it. I'm not getting any benefit out of it. And I say, well, I don't think you actually would be holding on to this negative core belief if you weren't getting some benefit out of it. So let's take a look. Let's ask a deeper question. What benefit have you been using, or what benefit have you been getting out of these core beliefs? And so here's an example of what somebody wrote. I've been so used to being hard on myself that it's become a habit. it's also a message that I've been told repeatedly growing up. So I guess I never even thought about challenging it before. So I accepted this as true because that's what I was told my whole life. I never even thought, well, maybe I maybe I should challenge that. So as you think about the core beliefs that you have, you may want to ask yourself the same question of, why have you accepted this as true? What benefits did I get out of believing that this was completely true? And so this person said, when I accepted it to be true, it gave me a sense I could stop trying. If I believed that I was a really bad student, I could stop trying. I didn't have to keep working hard. I could just drop out of high school and not have to deal with the hard things. It was a backwards way of trying to give me a break. I thought to myself, yep, I suck, so I should just give up. I used to feel sorry for myself, which kind of felt comforting in a weird sort of way. So this person identified that the benefit that I get about accepting that I'm not good is that then I don't have to try. If a person who's struggling with addiction continues to walk around believing that they're horrible, the benefit that they get about that is I can separate, I can disconnect from other people. I don't have to feel so much shame. I don't have to put myself out there and be vulnerable. So it protects me in a way from being vulnerable. So that's the benefit that I'm getting out of it. And then we start to ask the question, well, is it really a benefit? Is it actually really helping you, or is it serving you at all? Another person said, the benefit I get. So as we start to work through that, then we start to say, well, what's the benefit that I would get out of challenging these negative core beliefs? What would happen if I started to ask myself, well, is this really true? Is it 100% true? Maybe it's not completely true. What's the benefit of doing that and asking that question? And this person said, I actually find myself being kinder to myself and actually giving myself a real break. I find myself being more patient and gentle with myself while still dedicated to the effort of improving. I find that I like myself better and it motivates me to keep going. So in this person, when they started to say, well, maybe I am not a horrible person. Maybe it isn't completely true. Maybe I do have value. Maybe I am good at some things. When I start to ask that question, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I can be a little bit kinder to myself. Maybe I can be more patient. Maybe I can be more encouraging to myself instead of just blanketly accepting that I'm bad and it's just not going to get any better. So we use a worksheet to process this. And so at the top, we write down what's the core belief. My core belief is whatever. And then we're gonna rate this on a scale of 1 to 7, with 7 being absolutely true and 1 being absolutely false. So if I have a core belief that says that I'm horrible or I'm a bad person, well, how true is that? How true is that? Well, I feel it's 7. I absolutely feel that I'm a horrible bad person, so I'm gonna circle 7. Or I don't always feel that way. So sometimes I feel that way. So maybe I'll circle that as a 3 or 4, or I don't think that's true at all. I'm going to circle that as a 1. Most of the time, people don't circle 1 when they fill out these things, though. It's usually higher than that. So then we ask the question, I'm holding on to this belief because what are the benefits that I'm getting out of holding on to this belief? Why am I holding on to it? How is it serving me? What is it doing for me? I'm going to try and answer that. What are the consequences of me holding on to this belief as if it were true and not evaluating its validity? And we talked a little bit about spending some time pondering and asking that question. Um, is it hurting me to continue to hold on to this core belief? And how does this core belief serve, support, or hinder my sense of peace? If it's a positive core belief, it probably is serving and supporting my sense of peace. But if it's a negative core belief, it's probably not making me happier, not bringing me greater joy, greater love. It's probably causing me to pull away, isolate, continue to numb. And then the last question I think is really important is, how willing am I to reconsider this core belief and let it go? So that is, let me stop sharing. That is of what I wanted to talk about today. Now I have to figure out how I stop sharing.
At the top of your
Oh, there we go.
screen.
There we go. There
There
we
you
go.
go. There you
Yeah,
go. See,
thank
all
you.
this technological
I
stuff.
know, right?
Really interesting stuff. I've got so many thoughts that came up, and I would invite anybody who's got questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. We'd love to hear from you. But I was thinking, I'm going to start with the worksheet that you just did, because you said, if they're positive, uh, so I'm thinking if I'm writing out that worksheet for my core beliefs, I'm probably going to have multiple. Some of them will be positive, some of them will be negative, some of them, and they will vary on the scale from the 1 to 7. The positive one, early in my recovery, probably was non-existent, but when I started getting a clue about that, then maybe it was a 1,
Right.
and those negative messages would be at a 7. So over time with recovery, for me, I've been able to change those. But wow, when you were talking, I was like, I so went back to early recovery and those negative messages, and I could really relate to the message of I'm used to being hard on myself. It was the messages that I was told growing up. For me, it didn't give me a reason to not try. I think it contributed to my perfectionism, and that I always, if I wasn't that hard on myself, I was never going to achieve this unattainable, quite frankly, goal, So,
Right.
but which then I always fell short, which probably contributed because I was failing. So then I didn't have to. Then I was using addiction to manage all that shame around that. So I can see how that all kind of spirals, around. But definitely grew up with the negative message. I remember, I got an A minus. Why didn't you get an A? It was like, so I was like, oh, I failed again.
Mm-hmm.
In most cases, an A minus is a pretty darn good, grade. But and I love my parents. Don't get me wrong. All of that. But so I was thinking, but even to articulate, like on the worksheet, like it probably is a challenge for people to start even being able to identify what a core belief is,
Mm-hmm.
So I love that when you're working with them, you're dialoguing about that and probably helping them be able to say, oh, that's an old message that I've heard, and then being able to analyze how helpful is this to you in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
But even just having that realization that I have core beliefs and that there's a possibility they may not be serving me well has to be a step in the right direction. I think, when you're talking about the fluorescent tattoo on my heart type of thing, I thought that feels really true too, because, a tattoo is always visible, but with the fluorescent, I could see that there are times, that the light is shining on it and it's like, poof, like in your
Mm-hmm.
face with that, and, can't see anything except through that, that lens. So, and I'm thinking little babies don't have core beliefs, so this feels like stuff that we learn,
Mm-hmm.
along the way, from the messages. You talked about my boss is not safe, my mom is a martyr. There's the global ones, like the whole world is not safe, and everything is bad, or whatever. But with some of them, I thought, well, my mom might be a martyr, or my boss might not be safe. So there are some of them that there's some truth to that. And,
Mm-hmm.
like you talked about too, my dad is a drunk and I can't trust him. That's probably true,
Right.
on some level. Now, does that mean everybody can't be trusted?
Right.
No. So learning to have that, to be able to look at the person, the situation, and whatever, with a more accurate, more fine-tuned lens,
Mm-hmm.
probably helps serve us better.
Right.
The whole I am, and the trust and power and powerless, it's the do it by myself. So my family quotes, I was very young, and they still to this day, and I'm not very young, and they I do by self. And so I learned at a very young age, to I'm going to do this myself. and I'm sure there were rewards in that, that I was independent and strong-willed
Hmm.
and all of that. Of course, it also, there's the dark side to, to everything. And so, I've had to learn. Uh, I have I have a post-it note on my. Well, actually, I'll show it to you. I had to learn ask for help. I
Oh
have a
yeah.
post-it note that reminds me that I don't have to do everything, nor should I do
Hmm.
everything by myself. So, I want to be a team player. I want to be a good team player, but that means I have to count on other people as well. So,
Yeah,
so even a post-it note helps remind me,
I love
that
that.
my intrinsic core values aren't always
Right.
serving me well. So really useful stuff. So comments on anything I said, and we do have somebody that asked a question too. So
So I love that you are aware of that. And like, so if we take a look at, if my dad is a drunk and I can't trust him, then I look at the other two core beliefs, the other two genres. Well, what does that say about me? Well, maybe it doesn't say anything about me, or I think it means that I'm a horrible person. So
yeah,
it's taking a look at that. So Abby said, I
yeah,
guess
I'll read it for you.
thank you.
If some of our core beliefs are subconscious but have an automatic response when triggered, how can we be more aware of what we tried all our lives to suppress?
That's such a beautiful question. So part of that is it's helpful if we understand, okay, we have these three genres. I have the I am genre, the safety and trust genre, and the powerlessness genre. And then you've identified that you're having an automatic response. So part of that is being mindful, or even after the fact, because it's hard to do it in the moment, but being mindful and after the fact saying, okay, what was going on with me? What was my body doing? Was I feeling heat? Was I like getting really angry and defensive? Like, what was I doing? And then we backtrack a little bit. And instead of identifying what the negative core belief was first, we identify what wound just got stirred up for me. And to me, that's really a powerful part of that is, well, what was the wound? Oh, my rejection wound got stirred up for me, or oh, my abandonment wound got stirred up for me, or oh, that's my betrayal wound getting stirred up for me. So, for example, when my son is back talking to me a little bit, well, what wound is that that's stirred up for me? Well, that's my rejection wound. And here's this 12-year-old who's stirring up my rejection wound, and I've identified it. Oh, because I can feel myself getting pumped up, and I'm about ready to get defensive, and I'm about ready to argue back with him. Okay, whew, what's going on? Oh, that's my wound. Now, what's the negative core belief that got stirred up for me? So I'm asking that question, and as I'm processing or I'm journaling this, I'm processing that, and I'm saying, oh, what is it? Oh, it's I'm not a good dad, or he doesn't respect me. That's the negative core belief that's getting stirred up for me. And so I'm journaling that. I'm writing it down. So in you identified that a lot of these are automatic responses. These tattoos have been written on our hearts since we were kids, and so we may not recognize what they are. And so we identify, when was the time I got triggered? Let me journal about that a little bit. Let me see if I can put on paper what might be going on. And to me, there's a huge value of taking what's going on in our heart and our mind and put it on paper, so I can like objectively look at it. I can say, oh, that's what it is. So my son is starting to argue with me. My wound is getting stirred up, and now the negative core belief is, well, I must be a bad dad. Well, now now I've written that down, I can challenge it. Am I a bad dad? Have I made mistakes as a dad that weren't that great? Yes. But are there also evidence to show that I'm a good dad, that I care about him? Yes. And I start to be able to have that question. And so then, what does it serve me to walk around thinking that I'm a bad dad? Well, it doesn't. It doesn't serve me to do that, and it doesn't serve my son either. So, am I an imperfect father? Absolutely, I'm an imperfect father. Do I make mistakes? Yes, and I can own that, and I can talk to him about that. But I'm not going to do that if I'm just like, I'm a horrible person. I'm a horrible dad. I'm just going to go withdraw, or I'm going to yell at him. That's not going to help either. So it's taking those moments where you did have an automatic response, journaling, okay, what was that like? What was the wound? What is the core beliefs that are being stirred up right now? And asking, sitting with that, and just starting to challenge that. And then going back to the question, okay, now that I've identified the core belief, let's evaluate it on a scale of 1 to 7. Is it absolutely true? Probably not. So I hope that answered your question.
Well, I think that's a great idea. And even with the journaling, I thought, I think early on for me, I would not have been able, even if I journaled and looked at all that, I probably would not have been able to pick out the patterns because I probably was too defended in that. I couldn't have looked at that. So having someone else help me, someone who could help me, whether it's a sponsor or a therapist or whatever, but help me look at those patterns and go, okay, I was feeling, and like you talked about, this is what I'm feeling in my body. This is what, this is what it made me think of, whatever dump I could put in that journal so that I could get as much information, so that I could have somebody that could help me more objectively, go through it and figure out what those nuggets of the core beliefs are, but for me, I always think, hot mess, very emotional, couldn't deal with all that. I would not have been able to find patterns, on my own. So finding a trusted person that can help figure out what's going on with that subconscious and automatic responses. You may be way ahead of me and, be able to look at it in a journal and be able to identify it. But I would invite you, if if you're not seeing the patterns or able to identify that core belief, find someone that can help you figure that out. Dear Troy, I identify and work through my core beliefs. What are suggestions to put it to rest once and for all?
Yeah, so that is a great question as well. And part of that is identifying, well, what is true? What is really true? And when we are able to identify what is true, that actually brings us a lot more peace than what we've been operating as what we've been operating on as if we thought it were true, but it actually hasn't been true. And so when for example, if I have a negative core belief that says I'm unworthy of love and belonging, and I've been operating on that for a long time, and then I start to say, well, is it absolutely true on a scale of 1 to 7? Is it absolutely true? Well, no, it's not. What is some evidence to show that I am worthy of love and belonging? And I start to find some truths to support that, some evidence that can support that. Then I'm able to say, well, maybe it's not as true as I thought it was. Maybe it's more true that I am worthy of love and belonging. I want to lean into that a little bit. What would my life be like if I started to believe that I was worthy of love and belonging? How would I interact with my loved ones? What would I do when I'm feeling tempted to act out if I really was able to connect with the truth that I'm worthy of love and belonging? Well, I probably wouldn't do the things that I've been doing. I'd probably be willing to be more vulnerable. I'd be more willing to reach out to others when I'm struggling for support. And and as I do that, and I might even, like, I'll do this. I'll call my friend Matt, and I'll say, Matt, I'm really struggling because I just yelled at my son. I'm really feeling like I'm a horrible dad. And he'll say, man, I've watched how you interact with your son. I've seen how many wonderful things you've done as a dad. I know you're feeling really bad. Can you forgive yourself for yelling at your son, and can you go back and re-engage with your son? And I'm able to in that moment say, I am a good dad. I do care about my son. I love him. I want him to be good. So that inspires me to then go back and change what I've done in the past and have a different relationship with him in the future. And that reinforces the positive belief that I'm a good person. So the negative core beliefs, they've been tattooed there for a really long time. There are some, like EMDR is an amazing tool. Of therapists who are trained in EMDR, that's a really amazing tool to like rewrite that. That's not the only way, but what we're really wanting to do is rewrite it. I want to remove that negative tattoo from my heart. I don't want it to be there anymore. I want a new one. I want to rewrite it with something that is more truthful, that resonates and empowers me to do what I want to do. And so hopefully I answered that for you, Doug, but it's let's find a way to remove it and put something there. If I just remove it and leave it blank, that's not going to help. I need to put something positive and something truthful in its place.
I have this vision of there's that reality TV show about the bad tattoos, and then they go and they redo them and make a new design. And I had this little image of like, oh, it's a new tattoo that, it corrects the bad one.
Yeah.
And I was thinking with your son, you're talking about that. And I thought, wow, what a powerful thing. Not only are you changing the message for yourself. First of all, I love that you got validation from someone else, because
Mm-hmm.
this is the worst thing for me, is if it's all in here. If I get input from other people, that's often very helpful for me. But you're showing your son how to do this differently, so he doesn't have to start off with a really bad tattoo. He can
Mm-hmm.
end up with these positive messages, tattooed from the start. So I just thought that was a really helpful thing. I was thinking too, I almost laughed when I read the question, put it to rest once and for all. And I thought, you gave an example of like, it doesn't 100% go away, but you can quickly, you can shift the pathway. You can either go, well, I'm going to go down that really dark road, or I'm going to go this way. And I have that where it comes up, where I go, oh, I'm such an idiot. And I'm really able pretty quickly to go, wait, no, that's not the right message. What I just chose to do, that wasn't my finest moment. That wasn't my best choice, whatever. I can look at it as that action, wasn't 100% what I would have chosen, or could have chosen. But that doesn't make me an idiot, because, that was the old message of, I'm an idiot. I'm always an idiot. And that's not true. I just didn't choose, my best choice in that moment. I've struggled with, food addiction, along the way. And it used to be good and bad. I was immediately bad if I chose to eat, whatever, piece of cake,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I have been able to change that message of, that doesn't make me good or bad. I've taken the morality out of that. And it's, okay, you didn't choose to eat, the best. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and, just move on. And,
Mm-hmm.
I can choose better the next time. And it really has, what you talked about with one of those messages, learning to be kinder to myself, because that rigidity, was so shame filling, and it took me to such a dark place. So it really ended up helping me in my recovery and my connections with other people. Because the other thing about being so horrible is, no one's going to love me. No one, if they really knew. And I would be super dismissive of people if they said something kind of like you were talking about with there's 24 really good comments, and there's one that was actually a good comment. It was just a little bit of input, like,
Mm-hmm.
it was constructive criticism. It wasn't like you're horrible. But in looking at those, if I oh shoot, I forgot where I was going with that. Doesn't matter. I forgot, lost my train of thought. But with those negative messages, I forgot. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
And I'm not an idiot. I just
No.
I forgot in the moment. So
You're talking about practicing mindfulness and self-compassion, and I think that that's really, uh, like I said, these wounds, these messages have been written a lot of times since we were little. So we have to just start to recognize, well, there it is. Oh, there it is. It's not true. Let me be mindful. Let me practice some self-compassion. In fact, there's a meditation called Tonglen meditation that so it's one of the hardest meditations to do, and I usually teach it later on, after, like in the end of the work. But Tonglen, it was created by Tibetan monks, and basically you're breathing in the suffering of the world or the person that is in your house. For example, when I do it, I'll think about the suffering that I've put my wife through and my kids, and I will breathe in their suffering. It sounds so weird, like why in the heck would you do that? But you breathe in their suffering, and then it's almost like a light touches it and changes it to compassion, and then I breathe out compassion. So I'm breathing in the pain and I'm breathing out compassion and love, and I'm wanting to almost bless them for their sorrows. And in the process of doing that, for me, it's like every time I breathe in that suffering, it's like washing away that negative belief. And then I'm breathing out love and kindness. And that's writing a new one. It's I am a loving person. I am kind. I'm willing to sit in the pain and breathe it in, and I'm going to breathe it out. So you can Google Tonglen meditation, and there's quite a few different people that are out there that lead you through one of those. But that's one of the ways that I found that actually helps me rewrite that negative core belief. I'm willing to sit in the pain, and so Tonglen is spelled Tonglen, Tonglen, like that.
Glen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and basically means in and out, breathing,
Mm.
taking and giving. That's what it means, taking and giving away. And for me, that has been really helpful for me to. I'm willing to sit in the pain. Yeah, it kind of is painful, but in the process, it's a very transformative experience because I'm breathing out love and compassion to them, and then to my neighborhood, and then to the world. And in the process, I'm realizing that I am worthy of love and belonging too.
And I hear that, and I think that's amazing. And I'm also thinking of someone in early recovery who is terrified of all, I mean, it's so scary. I mean, if addiction is, I can't deal with anything, I need to numb out, I need to escape, and then you're talking about inviting the negativity to turn it around. But still, wow. I mean, that's a huge step, a leap of faith to be willing to, engage in that. So
Yeah,
fascinating. I'm actually gonna look that up
yeah.
after this. So other questions, comments? So I have a question for you. Like, if somebody's coming in and they're fairly new in recovery, what kind of a time frame? And I hate time frames on some level, but what kind of a time frame do you typically see where people are able to start, looking at these core beliefs? Is it fairly early in the process, or?
It's pretty early because when I explain the process, and like we did last time, where I'm like, look, the reason why you're engaged in these addictive behaviors is you've been trying to numb the pain. And if we can give a name to the pain, this is a rejection wound, this is abandonment wound, this is a betrayal wound. Of course, you're going to want to try and numb it because it hurts. But the numbing actually hasn't been making it better. That helps the person relieve some of the shame of I'm just horrible, I suck, I'm a bad person. And like, oh yeah, I have been trying to take care of that in a way that's not working. I want to do some wound care in a way that actually is working. So just that alone, I think, helps diminish some of the shame. And then I say, okay, so when you've identified these wounds, there are negative messages that have been written on there that let's start to take a look at that. And I do that pretty early on. They may have a hard time um, rejecting the negative message at the beginning, and part of that is shame, which we're going to talk about later. But so shame definitely hijacks a lot of that. But they are willing to start to ask the questions, and that to me is where the healing begins. It's like let me start to even just sit on that for a week or two. What am I getting out of that? Hmm. I don't want to admit that I'm getting anything out of that, but I am. And so we gently start to work through that, and it helps them start to challenge the core beliefs and help them find their truth. And that is, to me, what enables them to remain sober. It's what enables them to have better boundaries with their loved ones. When I believe that I'm worthy of love and belonging, boundaries are a whole lot easier for me to enforce than when I'm wondering about my value.
So here's, we're talking a lot about the addicts, but if I'm a partner of someone who's struggling, I could see that I have really negative core beliefs about that too. If
Yeah,
I only did whatever, then he, she would, so challenging core beliefs for partners
right.
has to be, has to be a challenge for them as well.
Yeah. And you know as well as I do that a lot of times the partner is walking around with, well, maybe if I was better in bed, or maybe if I had lost 10 pounds, or maybe if I was, and they again, that's the I am message. There's something wrong with me that's then causing my partner to act out this way. Well, that's not true. We know that's not true. But when I start to realize, well, I'm imperfect, but that I'm a good person and I'm worthy of love and belonging, and you're behaving that way and I don't really like it, I'm going to be able to set a better boundary about that because it's coming from this intrinsic place of healing. um, I am in a much better place. If I'm feeling like there's something wrong with me, it's almost impossible for me to set up a boundary that sticks.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, other questions, comments? So you've got your workbook. So can they go to Amazon to get your
Yes, you can go to Amazon, go to Amazon.com and just type in Troy L. Love. That's probably the fastest way to find it. Troy L. Love or Finding Peace. There are a couple of other books with the same title, um, but yeah. So
There you go. So I just put it in the chat for those of
thank
you
you.
who want to follow along. So,
Thank you so much.
okay, I think since we don't have any other questions, we'll wrap it up. We appreciate you being here. Next week, we won't have one. Everyone is traveling, and so there won't be one. So Kristen Snowden will be in 2 weeks, and Troy will be back the fourth week of October. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. And we appreciate all of you joining us and your questions. It's always really helpful. So thank you.
Bye.
Bye.